the end of the year, we do not do some 3-page letter that goes out. And I don't think donors want to feel like they're in a donor cycle. I don't even look at those letters that come in. And then I think people also just want quick information. So like we have sent things that are like all the information's there and you can give, but it is packaged in such a way that you want to open it. I think it's important for nonprofits to go to other events. How can you collaborate and take the same dollars and make greater impact? So I think that's really important. But then going to their events and seeing what they do well, what would you, how could you build upon that? What would you not do? Like you gotta get out there and see what other people are doing, and then also try to help support them too.
And I know you know this, but I've been following your work for some time now, and I want you to explain to the listeners, of course, the work that you all are doing, and you call it a literacy crisis and helping children with dyslexia, and I assume, which is horrible, that you had a background in education. And that's not the case at all. You're, I don't know if you're still practicing law, but you certainly were.
Well, what I will say is people ask me that all the time, and I practice law every day running a nonprofit.
There you go. Okay. Yeah.
You do.
Absolutely.
And I'm like stunned actually that there are nonprofits that that don't have, folks reviewing contracts and, things that come in, because there are pitfalls all over the place. And I will say, when I started RCF, I certainly didn't treat it that way. I didn't treat my role, as a lawyer, although that doesn't go away, the way you analyze things doesn't, just go away. But I got some pretty early lessons in, use your lawyer skills. You need contracts. Just because you're in the nonprofit space does not change. Somebody's volunteering to do something, but they have access to information or whatever. At the end of the day, you just do the right thing for the organization, be a great steward of it. And being a lawyer really helps with that.
Yeah. Protect the organization. Yeah.
Mm-hmm, the mission.
Absolutely.
At all costs. But my background is actually as a lawyer, and RCF is 6 years old. My son was diagnosed with dyslexia 7 years ago, a little over 7 years ago. And if you'd asked me, 8 or 9 years ago, if I thought I would help start and run an education nonprofit, I would have laughed and laughed and laughed.
Yeah.
No way, had no interest in being in the education space. Of course, value education, greatly, but, never had any inclination to be a teacher or anything like that, professor, none of those things. But there's nothing that will motivate a person more to find their mission and purpose than watching their child struggle. Mm-hmm. And I would never have chosen this path, but I can look back and see that my life was really all of my career and education and everything that led me to this point was really preparing me to be able to advocate for students with learning differences, but also the literacy crisis, and to be prepared to do that and to have the confidence to know that I could. So anyway, things all work out the way they're supposed to. And as you get older, you get to kind of look in the back, the rear view mirror a little bit and like, oh, that's why. That's why that happened. Yeah.
I think it's awesome. Yeah. I love it. The connection I was going to make was without knowing your background, and Alan had told me, so forgive me. I'm sorry. I don't know why my mind immediately went there when I was just thinking about it, but you've definitely gotten a crash course in education. That's for sure. Of course, you've had to be a quick study in that. Yeah.
Well, the irony, so I actually was doing a podcast maybe like a month ago, and somebody kind of brought up this same thing. And he was like, how did you figure all this stuff out? If this isn't your background. And I was like, the irony is because I can read.
Yeah.
So there's nothing that I can't do, learn, become an expert in, because I have the ability to read, write, and spell. And it's the other thing about learning how to read, when you're supposed to, developmentally when the expectation is there. Because what happens is, and you don't realize it because you're so little. So looking back, I don't even remember learning how to read. I just know that I was able to and good at it by the time I was supposed to, because I was a kid who wanted to read out loud in class, and I would get called on to read because I could read proficiently. So the messaging you get, but you don't know it and you're not really thinking about it. It's like, I'm good at this, and I'm smart, and I'm competent, and I'm capable, and I can do hard things. And so I've spent my life believing I'm smart and capable and I can do hard things. And it doesn't mean everything comes easy, but what it does mean is that I know some things might be harder, but I can do it. Like, I'm just going to have to put in a little bit more effort. I may not know anything about that, but I can research it and learn everything I want to know about it if I actually care about it enough. And that's what the law is all about. You don't graduate law school knowing everything there is to know about practicing law. I mean, you're constantly learning, new things. And especially as a new lawyer, I didn't graduate knowing anything about construction or environmental law, but those were the first two practice areas that I worked in. You had to figure it out. And that just was a process of reading, learning, comprehending, asking questions, reading, learning, comprehending, asking questions.
Yeah.
And that's what I did with this, like, highly motivated because it impacted my child. But then I, through the process of learning what I needed to learn to help read, I started learning really about what you talked about at the beginning, which is the literacy crisis, which is much bigger than dyslexia and impacts 69% of our nation's fourth graders. If you are not reading by fourth grade, you are in very big trouble. And it is literally the upstream cause of almost every societal issue that we face. I would argue every societal issue that we face. There's the Desmond Tutu quote that says, at some point we have to stop pulling people out of the river and go upstream to find out why they're falling in.
That's beautiful.
And that is literally, literacy is literally why people are falling in. And then all the other nonprofits that are doing incredibly important work around mental health or, food and housing insecure. I mean, you name it.
Yeah.
They are inundated and doing really important work, but cannot serve all the people that need to be served, because when 69%, of our fourth graders are going to end up being adults who can't read, above a fourth, fifth, sixth grade level, and in some cases can't read at all or functionally illiterate. Yeah. There's no nonprofit cause that isn't benefited if we're successful in our mission to make sure every child learns to read.
It's tragic. My wife taught fifth grade at a low-income public school for 10 years, and she's subbing right now as we speak. And I witnessed it, in being a filter or what have you, or like being a sounding board for day after day and, school year after school year and whatnot, and how tragic. It's a tragedy what's happening. And what I was thinking about, Jen, on the way in, it's beautiful that you said, it's like, hey, I was curious. My son needed help. And I use the term curiosity when it comes to like startup. I think that please don't, with the most respect possible, I think it's very entrepreneurial what you've done. And I come from that background as well, right? And I think that a lot of the beginnings of that entrepreneurial journey is curiosity. And I was really struck on the way in thinking about our conversation by going, well, how do you expand on your curiosity if you can't read? Mm-hmm. And it's just, it really hit me and how it will rob people, like you said, their future and what have you. And no, you're absolutely correct. I've always known that. I didn't know that the statistics were so dire and what have you. And, I'm just glad we're able to have this conversation and shine some more light on it. Yeah.
Thanks for the opportunity to do it, because it is, it is such a huge issue. And yet the most educated people don't know it, including me. That's not a criticism. That is, we really don't talk about it.
Well, do you think I don't mind if I interrupt you? Sorry, Jen, but it's like, do you think it's just because there's like a natural complacency, or we just take it for granted, right? How have you identified that?
I
So we
think
still
there's a
understand.
couple things. For
Yeah.
sure, if you didn't struggle with reading, you definitely take it for granted. And I fall into that category of person, that my school experience and education experience and my daughter, so I have an 18-year-old daughter, my son's 14. My 18-year-old daughter's experience is the same as mine. And so if I just had Kenzie, I would still be blissfully unaware. I don't know what I'd be doing right this second, but it certainly wouldn't be sitting here. And I wasn't having anyone coming to me telling me about this issue. So I would think what I thought, which is, yeah, there's going to be people that struggle with reading. And that's probably there's probably a certain percentage of people that, I hate to say this, but honestly, I really thought there's probably just a certain percentage of people that either cognitively aren't smart enough to do it. I have no basis for thinking that, right? That's just, I don't
We
know
were
why I think
conditioned.
that.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then there's a certain amount of people, percentage of people that just aren't going to try hard enough. And, it's not like everything came easy to me in school. I worked hard. And so, my belief system is you get out what you put in. And I still believe that. But what I know now is that as it relates to literacy, there is a certain percentage of folks. So you should also know, and listeners should know, 95+% of the population is cognitively able to read. So that's based on neuroscience, decades and decades of it. So we know, if you're thinking 25%, write them off, not true. And we also know from the science of reading, so decades of fMRI studies and neuroscience and linguistic science, that that 95% of the population will be able to learn to read if they are given direct, explicit instruction. So we know how to teach reading so that the masses learn to read. And to be, functionally literate at a minimum. So that's what should be happening. The numbers should be in the 90s plus. So I didn't know that, and I wouldn't have believed that. But now I know, that's the science. There's evidence, decades of it. So I think that's important to know. This isn't a belief thing. I'm coming to the space from a dyslexia perspective. So, my son has a learning difference, but I think most people think that that's reading backwards or writing backwards. Again, another thing that I thought, I don't know where that got perpetuated, but Reed doesn't write backwards. He doesn't see backwards. It's not a vision problem. It really is just, it's hereditary. So, we have it in our family, which we didn't know. And it's just a different wiring of the brain. But part of the definition is that it's an unexpected difficulty in learning to read, write, and spell. And it's unexpected because they're so bright. So these are kids that, really high vocabulary and, are able to talk to adults. And they're like, wow, this is like a little adult talking to me. So then when they can't read, it's incongruent with what cognitively they're clearly capable of. And then they aren't performing on a written test, or they can't read a book in class, or they can't memorize the sight words, or they fail a spelling test every time. And so then the narrative becomes they're not trying hard enough. They're being lazy because, again, it's incongruent with what their cognitive ability is clearly. So they must just not be trying. And instead, these kids are trying so hard. So the messaging for them is really confusing because they're like, gosh, I don't think I could be trying any harder. But I do see that other kids are able to do things that I'm not, able to do. And they're seemingly not trying at all. So It really messes with a kid with a learning difference. But it's also, like I said, so much bigger than that. So, 20% of the population, 1 in 5, have dyslexia. Very common. They also have unique strengths. And so, our gala, which is how we got connected, is really about the dyslexic strengths piece. But we help with literacy across the board. But the heart and soul of what started RCF was the dyslexia piece. how I stumbled upon the literacy crisis is because of the dyslexia piece. But these are kids that are uniquely gifted. They think outside the box. They tend to be visual thinkers. Lots of our best professional athletes are dyslexic. So Kobe Bryant, Lewis Hamilton. I'm trying to think of others like Shaquille O'Neal, like all our big names, or ADHD. That's another really common neurodiversity, piece. And so they have these unique gifts, but they tend to struggle in school. And so, without the right type of instruction, it is 40% of the world's self-made millionaires and billionaires are dyslexic, and so is 40% of the prison population. So, there's a direct correlation with access. And, that's really what we're trying to solve for, not only raising awareness about the literacy crisis and about dyslexia, like the type of instruction that RCF provides is best practice for all kids. Vital for dyslexic students. It's vital for the 1 in 5, but it is best practice for all kids to learn to read. And, but it's typically really expensive. And the folks the goal is to make this training accessible, both financially and geographically. So we train teachers all over the United States, 47 different countries, and globally. So since January of 2024, we've trained over 3,000 educators, 47 different states and 16 different countries. Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah. So you went at it with, okay, there's no lid on this. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Well, when you say
I didn't know initially, I will tell you that the way I really realized, this is so much bigger. I can't take credit for, I can't take credit for some of the things. I show up every day. I work 7 days a week. You're not going to find a more passionate person about the work that we do and dedicated to it. But the way that I realized how big it really was is we had a training where we could have 24 people. It was virtual, but it was in 2021. And, so we were still in COVID, a lot of schools were still hybrid, and teachers were super burned out. And so the week that we had available was our spring break here in Orange County, Florida. And I was like, the teachers are not going to take their 1 week off and go to this thing. So I think we just need to open it up to, first come, first serve. And we were offering the training completely for free. So this is a training that's usually $1,500 a teacher and for $0. So we announced that we were going to do it. And the day that we posted it,
you're a founder and a mom, and I'm chuckling, and not to disparage anyone, because I can hear, you got someone in the background. you're running a household and running a foundation and all this. I love it. I'm fine with it.
I'm so sorry.
Don't be sorry at all. We started the podcast in my dining room, so
we started RCF in my dining room too.
Yeah, there you go. You know what I mean? So I love it. No, it's. Jen, it's real, and that's the whole point. We're not doing this. We're not. I mean, we want views, but we're doing this for feelings and for folks to get value out of it. So no worries at all. Yeah.
Well, it is a siege, the likes of which I'm doing it everywhere and every place I can. But that posting, it went viral, and it was during Christmas break, and my daughter, she's like, "Mom, your phone's blowing up." And I was like, "What do you mean?" She's like, "I don't know. You posted something on Facebook." And the next thing I know, a couple days later, it was up to 375,000 comments, likes, direct messages, stuff was coming in. And I had no staff. So I am literally responding to, at that, there were probably 2,500 messages, questions, whatever. And I was like, oh my gosh. And from all over the world except Antarctica.
Wow.
And I was like, we're going to have a problem trying to I was like, I think it's gonna, and it did. Like when we actually posted the link to register for those 24 spots, it crashed, the site crashed. And then of course everybody was mad about that too. But I was like, okay, this is, everyone's, but it goes to show like people are suffering so much. Just when you talk about the 1 in 5, right? Like that's a lot of people.
Yes.
But then when you talk about the literacy crisis and you talk about 69% of the US population, forget about globally, you don't know anybody who's not impacted. They may not be talking about it because struggling with literacy is riddled with shame. And so people don't just walk around talking about, hey, is your kid reading? Like my kid's not reading that good. Nobody wants to talk about that because you take it personally and you think there's something wrong with your child or like you didn't make a smart baby. Like it's so messed up. But the truth is you don't know anybody who's not suffering with this. And a lot of times your own child is suffering with it, but you don't know.
You might not even know it.
Yes. Right. And they get, different states have different kinds of testing. In Florida, it's the FAST test. And a 3, it's a scale of 1 to 5. A 3 is passing. But a 3, by its very definition says that this is a student who might need help in the next grade, meaning they're not at grade level. Or there's a risk that they're not at grade level, but they get to move on. So, you think you're okay. Oh, by the skin of our teeth, we got a 3. But, and your child might be getting A's and B's and whatever. But here in our district, we've got schools where our graduation rate's 90+%. But, we've got 60 something percent of kids who aren't proficient readers. So we are passing them through. We are graduating them. And that's happening everywhere. It's not just here. And it's not just in Florida, it is everywhere. And so there's just a lot of half truths. It is true that our graduation rate is, 90+%. And everybody's like, that's so great. But like our reading and math proficiency is nowhere near our graduation rate. And that's also true, but no one talks about that.
Yeah. And that's an issue, a discrepancy issue. No question. I saw it once again, just with my wife's, exposure and just pushing kids through. And it's ones that we've mentioned this term before. It's tragic. It's really, really horrible. I want to backtrack to the part where you're like, okay, we're onto something. And I want to weave that into, you said something very, very interesting. This is part of my line of questioning because I want to get to the fundraising piece and just the staffing piece. And you're a founder, and we don't get a lot of founders to come on the episode. So I was really looking forward to this because I want to hear about it from your perspective, Jen. Right? So it's like, hey, I had 2,500 comments. You got to get to each one of those comments. You know what I mean? You have to push the mission. Like you knew that without really knowing, like you knew that had to be done and you had no staff. So tell me about some things that you did. It sounds like you just did it on the fly, obviously, because you had to. The market's telling you something, how important this work is, kind of what were the next steps when you're like, oh, geez, we have to, add people and I have to, maybe you didn't have a board built out, all the way yet and stuff like that. Talk about just that, the growing pains. And I'm just typecasting that because, no matter what, it's amazing and a blessing when there's that much growth, but it can also be very, very painful and inconvenient as well.
Oh, it's painful. All right. Yeah. It's, and we're still in that. And I think there's days where I'm like, are we ever not is it ever not going to feel like, that? But what I will say is to start, I think because, first of all, I grew up on a horse farm in Ocala, Florida. My dad's an equine vet. We never took vacations. He was on call 24/7. We had animals to take, if you live on a farm, you have chores, you have responsibilities, even as a young kiddo. And of course, it was modeled for me. Both of my parents worked very hard. And so I have a certain type of work ethic that I think is a result of how I grew up and how my parents sort of modeled work and really taking, pride in it and going above and beyond. And then I worked in law firms that were Holland and Knight is, an international law firm. And that's where I started, practicing as a lawyer. And I worked with incredible lawyers who worked really hard and went above and beyond. I was in all these environments where that was really important. And your word is your bond, and, your integrity is everything. And, if you think you're going to miss a deadline, or like that, you're communicating that in advance and you're not trying to hide it, and you're not, blaming someone else. Like if there's mistakes, if you're accepting responsibility, for whatever it is. And that, I think I've always shown up really enthusiastic for whatever it is that I'm doing. There's no job that's beneath me, regardless of my title or, level of expertise. And I think I also learned understanding everything about a particular job makes you better, because, sometimes you got to get something filed and your legal secretary is gone for the day. So like, you need to know how to do that. And that's technically not in your job description, but like, if it needs to get filed, it needs to get filed. So I've run RCF the very same way, and I think that's just built into who I am. But I do think that it helped us be successful, very early on, that I did respond to all 2,500 of those messages. And some of them were copy and paste because it was the same thing, but also like a lot of it was just very personal. And the other thing is it's personal to me. So, I don't know that I'll ever hire anyone that cares about it in the same way that I do, because it is so personal to me. And, my husband used to say to me, he's like, you're hard to run with, like you have a gear that not everybody has. So I do think that's part of it, between being super passionate about something and like, I can go all day, all night if I have to, and I will. That's what has driven a lot of this. But, and then, the goal is obviously that you hire people which is hard, sometimes you do and sometimes you don't. It's even harder in nonprofit than in for-profit. I'm coming from the for-profit space, which is a blessing, I think, because I feel like I have found a little bit in nonprofit that there can be a little bit of complacency. And, I'm like, okay, am I crazy? Or is it that I'm coming from an environment where it's very competitive and like, there's no room for just pushing papers around. Like we need to be getting somewhere and driving towards a mission, a goal. And like I say, I run RCF, that way. But I knew early on, when that stuff started to happen, that I needed to get help. And the first person I hired was, and it was actually in COVID. So she was virtual. I just lost her at the beginning of this year, and I'm like, she was the awesome, amazing first hire. And I'll plug it. It's Belay, is the company.
I'm doing much better about not interrupting with the pod after 200 episodes or whatever. But Jen, I'm very passionate about, I really, really relish the opportunity to speak to folks that have your experience in the for-profit side. And then I have a very honest conversation about what your observations have been running a charitable foundation, a nonprofit, just a startup, that's what I call it, right? And seeing the differences with the hiring and being aware of, and I know it's a buzz term, but being aware, I shouldn't say that. Andrew, we got to edit that out. But being aware of burnout and turnover and how that can affect a for-profit company tremendously, but especially how prevalent that is in the nonprofit side. So you were just getting into just, how imperative it was for you to, and I'm putting words in your mouth, but please let me know if I'm on the right path, how imperative it was for you to make the right hires and to make sure that they didn't, of course, feel the same way about the crisis that you do. Because it's, if they weren't affected by it and touched by it the way you were, that it would be impossible for them to feel the same way. But how you just created and fostered that environment where you could grow the foundation with your staff and what have you, talk about that.
Well, I think my first hire, Karen, who is my like assistant, but then grew into a million different, I got lucky, honestly, that like God is good is part of it, because we couldn't have done what we did without Karen. We're very similar. She learned like my working style, and she could anticipate like the next thing. And then she would learn, like she'd spend time with me and see what I was doing and be like, hey, would it be helpful if I took that off your plate? Like, I feel like I can do that. And then that frees you up to do more things. So like by the grace of God, that was the first person, that I hired, that one could grow my capacity, because if I'm trying to schedule a meeting with 12 people, by the time you get the 11th person to commit, like then 4 other people can't. So like I was so stuck in just scheduling. So to have her, and then she just had this incredible skill set. Then the next thing I did was on the programming side. So folks that we were using to do our trainings were independent contractors, which is great that they're not on staff, but so I didn't have the overhead of them initially, but then the cost of them, with travel and hotel and their non-negotiable cost, as opposed to having somebody on staff who had that skill set and could do, other things as well. So we started growing our capacity, on the programming side, still use independent contractors, but much more strategically, almost always like in a virtual capacity. So we didn't have to take on, rental car costs and hotel costs for a week and airfare, like just trying to be strategic, that way, like where can we cut costs, but we're not cutting the quality of the programming. On the fundraising side of things, obviously, eventually we hired somebody to help in development. I feel like development is the thing that turns over the most. And I don't know if this is true for everybody, but like what we do is not intuitive. Like our mission is not intuitive in a lot of ways. And kind of for some of the reasons we talked about, at the beginning of, most people don't know about the literacy crisis. Most people haven't thought about how reading is so critical to like your development, your self-esteem, and your lifelong ability to be successful. It makes sense when you start talking about it, but like most people are not thinking that way. Right. And so there's a big education piece. And then when people start learning about it, they're like, well, why would anybody be fighting about this? Like, this is just a no-brainer. And then you have to start learning about all the ways you have to word things. And, if you're in a room with this type of group, like the way you word it is probably going to be different than this group. And, starting to understand sort of some of the dynamics that I don't think happen in other nonprofits, or not in the same way that we have dealt with. So that's been really hard.
Yeah.
And also we're not a well-established, we're not the American Red Cross, right? We've been around for 50 plus years. Mm-hmm. So, I had said to our board about 2 years ago, I'm like, my dream person is someone who has been in for-profit like me, but has spent some time in nonprofit. Either they've spent some time, in nonprofit, they've been on a board and they've helped with fundraising and development, and or they're a donor themselves. So like they've been successful in for-profit and they're a donor. And so they are looking at development the way that a for-profit entity does, and it's entrepreneurial. This is a grind. This is a grassroots grind. And I have to have someone who like is locked arm in arm with me, that is willing to work at least as hard, as I'm working, because otherwise they feel defeated. You know what I mean? Like, because I'm bringing in stuff that they're not, and that feels bad. And also then I get frustrated because, you got to get in this. So, that has been a big thing too. I was able to hire somebody that's been for profit.
And I was going to ask you to just kind of double click on that a little bit. And like, how did you get over that frustration? Did you, I mean, cause I've learned a lot just in being, managing people and building a team and what have you. And I've learned a ton from my partner, Jason, and we're in this, same as you. We started in 2016. If you told me 10 years ago, this is what I'd be doing, I would have said, wow, far out. How'd I get there? Like, you know what I mean? Like, I'd be having this conversation with Jen. Holy smokes, that's really cool. But what? That doesn't make sense. I'm not computing that. So, it's a journey. I mean, you said frustration. You said, I wanted someone, you identified the right character. And I don't want to put you on the spot so much, but did you find, and the answer could be, no, I did it exactly the way I wanted to. Did you find that having someone meet that expectation was unreasonable? Did you have some growing pains with that? You said the most difficult piece was finding the right, development staff member, development team, that piece of it. Talk about that and just the challenges and just to help the audience if they're facing the same challenges and what you did to change yourself, if you did at all, or what have you.
I spent a lot of time. I am definitely somebody that if like something's not working, I immediately am like, what am I like? How am I contributing to this?
Sure.
Not the one who's like, it's everybody else. Like the first thing I'm thinking is like, okay, what can I do differently? Yeah. And I will say there was a couple of years where I was like, it's me. Like there's something about like, I'm weird. I decided kind of that I'm weird and I am driving like too hard and this is atypical. Like
you're an outlier. You're an outlier, Jen. Yeah.
Well, my husband is part of the reason. Like he said, we used to do triathlons and he did them before I did. And then I started doing them and I was a lot faster than he was, but he's a big guy and I'm little. So, he said to me the analogy he gave me was, do you remember when we were like training together and you wanted to run and you were running slower than you normally run so that we could stay together? And he's like, and I was running as hard as I could to try to keep up. And we were both miserable. Mm. And he was like, that's what's happening to you in this. And he was like, you can run so hard and nothing, like there's just nothing that's going to stop you, which is true. And he knows that we've been together 27 years now. Like since I was 19, like nothing's going to stop me if I'm trying to get somewhere. But also he's like, it's really hard. It's hard to keep up and not everybody can do that. But also you need a partner that will let you run like you need to run and not make you feel like that's not okay or that, that you're being like that makes them feel bad about them. You need somebody that recognizes that's one of your just God-given gifts and you need to be able to run like that so that you can do the things that you need to do and it helps move the mission forward. But that they don't feel bad about that and that you don't then feel like you have to slow down, or pull people along. Cause that's where the frustration was coming from is like, you can do that for a little bit, but then it's like your legs just want to run. Yeah. So anyway, that was a really good analogy for me. And so it didn't make me feel bad about myself anymore because it started to make me be like, well, it's me and I need to slow down and I need to not have such high expectations of what we're accomplishing. And now I'm in the phase where I'm like, it's not only okay to have high expectations, this mission deserves it. Like our kids deserve it. And two, that I talk about it in interviews. So I'm not couching this or hiding it. Like, this is who I am. This is what you're coming into. And it's okay if that's not for you.
Yeah.
There are so many places that you can go and there's lots of really highly skilled, people and everybody needs stuff. But here, this is what the expectation is. And I don't expect anybody to be me, but I do have an expectation that like, we're not like, well, I won't do that. Like, that's hard. Like, that sounds hard. You know what I mean? Like, our kids have to do hard stuff every day. They have to go to school every day with teachers that aren't equipped with the tools to help them learn how to read. So how can I tell my son, like, you have to go do this really hard thing every single day, but I can't be burdened with another hard thing, you know?
Hey, everybody, taking a quick second to let you know this episode of Hey Nonprofits Raise More Money is brought to you by, you guessed it, HGA Fundraising, the fine folks at HGA Fundraising who provide the most profitable auction items in fundraising, the perfect addition for your next live auction, silent auction, online auction, raffles, door prizes, anything fundraising. Oh, also, they have the greatest webinars and podcasts and the greatest resources and coaching to help you succeed in your fundraising journey. HGA Fundraising, here to help you raise more money. Now back to the show. Let me ask you a question, because you pull really, really hard. I have a lot of like run really hard. There's so many different analogies. Like I used to say, like, I'm a racehorse. Let me run. You know what I mean? Like in business or my previous sales background or what have you before we started companies and what have you. And I notice now this entire I'm hearing exactly what you're saying. I love what you're saying about setting expectations, expecting a lot, but having that conversation up front. And this is not for everyone. I also heard you talk, and I just making note of it, that it is difficult to raise money for organizations that don't naturally touch people's heart in a one-to-one, right? And I hear a lot about that with the organizations that we have the opportunity to work with that are in rare disease, right? Yeah. So that it's a challenge for sure. But in building something great, I call it the people exercise. You have to trust people, right? You have to empower people. I don't think that's a buzz term that can be understated. I find myself in building, our company now, we're 22, 23 strong. I don't know what the last count is, right? Right. But I find myself empowering our team to do more and not be we call it like a choke point, or you have to go or micromanage. Yes. And I find myself, Jen, and I find this beautiful, it's serendipitous, where I find myself, I've hit the jackpot with people. Like you said, your first hire was out of, Karen, you hit it out of the park with Karen, right? And I call it like our hires have been number one draft pick, like Peyton Manning types, you know what I mean? And we're so fortunate time and time again. And it's amazing. And turnover for us is very, very low. And I find myself, like we said, empowering them. They understand how much how much we care about the work that we do, of course. But then I find myself kind of getting out of the way and just kind of letting them cook. Do you find the same?
Cool. Yeah. I mean, that's because the truth is I am the lid, and so we do a lot of, we started doing Working Genius. We did Enneagram, like everybody on the team, because trying to identify like what are people's strengths, not that you're ever going to have to work in space, like have parts of your job that are your frustrations or you're not good at, like it's a dream world where you don't have any of that. Yeah. But trying to get people to realize like what their strengths are. And then as a team trying to figure out, okay, how can we adjust? Because everybody's wearing 1,000 hats. And, you get hired to do development, but that you're doing events and you're doing grants and you're, it's like,
sounds like you're in the nonprofit space.
We're in the nonprofit, right? And that's where it gets like, you have to have people, I think, that understand like, here's the job description. But as you start working here, and we realized, one of the gals on our team used to do like stage managing for Blue Man Group. Well, she's involved in our production of events now. You know what I mean? Like, that's not what she got hired for. And she does other things too. But like, why would we not have Leah, helping with that? So I think her like title is something like director of grants and production or something, and it's like, people are like, what's that? But that's just how it works. But yeah, like trying to identify strengths and trying to get people in those roles as much as possible. And also like like Working Genius has tried to help. Sometimes we're not as good about it, but like, if somebody's a discerner, then they shouldn't be in a meeting about the initial ideas about something, because a discerner is going to, well, that's not going to work because of that. Well, what about that? Like, have you? And so then it stifles the creativity of, what you're going to do. You want a discerner before you execute. They should be in that middle phase, but they can feel like a Debbie Downer in the initial,
and they're not even trying to be, and they're not even trying. Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
And then that creates all kinds of weird dynamics. And so, and so we like read those books. I like flew somebody in from North Carolina that was like a Enneagram expert. And we did that. And I believe in all that stuff. I don't even listen to music anymore. I'm always listening to podcasts. I'm always reading, books or listening to leadership books. And, between the education space and the literacy crisis and research, everything anything innovative that's going on in the actual work that I do. And then also like, just how can I be a better leader? Like, how can I take better, like, how can I improve? And then ideally give them this information. Maybe they don't have to read the whole book, but like, what of this is helpful that is, my goal is that they stay forever, but if they don't, that if when they leave RCF, that they are leaving better than they came, and, in all the ways. I care about that as much as I care about, the work that we're doing. But I also believe if you feed into your team like that, then of course they also want to stay.
Yeah.
But it's hard. And, the truth is, like, I'm in a phase right now where I'm, lost Karen, which was unexpected. And so we were in this, hiring phase, and then didn't get somebody we thought was coming in. And now we have a new person in, but we have a huge event tomorrow. And so you're trying to onboard somebody while you're, like, that's the reality of this work. Whereas when I was, in a law firm and you needed to hire somebody, it was like, one, the money's there. So that's a no-brainer. Two, other people are vetting the 75 resumes that come in for the roller skating waitress who wants to be your development director, where you're like, what the, like, what is this? I mean, I had a Waffle House master chef swear, like, I get, it's wild, but you've got to review it. And I respond to everybody. So even if you're the Waffle House master chef and have no development experience, I'm still going to thank you personally for your interest. And, so I create a lot of work for myself sometimes in terms of like, but it's the culture that I'm responsible for our culture. And so, and everything trickles from there. So I do those things. I brought in consultants to help before, and they're like, you don't have to do that. And I was like, I know I don't have to. Like, we do it because it's just part of the culture. And the truth is, like, not everybody says anything, but some people do. And they're like, I really appreciate that you took the time. And that's enough to keep me going, to keep doing it and knowing it's the right thing to do.
All those things that you listed, Jen, sounds like you're running a business.
It is a business, right?
You are running a business, and you gotta, and I'm gonna take a little bit of a turn, and I'm gonna say, and you gotta have business coming in. You have to have money coming in the door. And I was waiting to ask you this question. I want to be respectful of your time. It's been amazing to hear this feedback and the story still being told, which is really, really cool, right? And I don't know if you look at it this way, but you're still young. Like, we're 9 years in. I feel like we're brand new. You know what I mean? You're 6 years in. It feels great, right? And to really be enjoying the work is such a huge piece of it. But I was waiting to ask you this question because you're an attorney, a former litigator, which means you were a really good one. And also, there's a huge piece to what you do about getting money in the door. So I assume that when you got going, you were not afraid to ask for money. And I want to talk about that journey a little bit, and how got folks involved and created your board and enabled your board to do the work they do. But let's get back to the fundraising piece. It's like, you understand how big of a piece this is. You understood when you started, and you understand even more now, and your team does, and that's the work that you're doing, right? You have to get money in the door. So, we're constantly talking to folks about, hey, listen, I understand call reluctance. I understand this and I understand that. And I know you didn't wake up this morning wanting to pick up the phone and ask people for money, but you have to. Mm-hmm. So what was your journey like with, getting on the phone or just talking to people about what you do and asking for money?
So, a couple things. One, not being in this role, being on boards, as a lawyer, I did not like asking for money.
Okay.
Um, and so I understand that space. I liked giving money, but I love the joy, like on the donor side. I love the joy of giving. It is not something I grew up like having modeled for me, and neither did my husband. It's our favorite thing to get to do now. And like we tithe, 10% right off the top, pre-tax dollars, and it's our favorite thing to do. So there's something really beautiful about giving. And so I understood that piece. And from a donor perspective, and there's lots of different types of donors, we're not people that need our names on, things. In fact, like sort of prefer not to have that.
Okay.
And not that there's anything wrong with that, but I have always run RCF trying to make sure, like, if there's been things that I did not like as a donor, that they are like a policy here. We don't do it. And it may be fine somewhere else, like and maybe it works lots of places, but if there's specific things like that, we don't do that. And one of them, for example, is the end of the year. We do not do some 3-page letter that goes out. And I know like it is part of the thing. And again, I'm not a nonprofit development person. Like the 3-legged stool, like I've heard it all. And I don't think donors want to feel like they're in a donor cycle. If they're in one, they're in one. But like, if they feel like they're in some kind of cycle, at least for me, I do not like it. Two, I don't even look at those letters that come in. If I'm giving, that none of that motivates me. I don't even open them. 3, we serve people that either struggled with literacy or struggle with literacy. And so to send a 3-page letter acting like we're experts understanding literacy, but then we ask you to read a 3-page letter, like it's pretty tone deaf to our audience,
Mm-hmm.
So, and then I think people also just want quick information these days, for better or worse. And so anyway, that's an example of something that like lots of organizations do that RCF does not do.
You've
But
done
we
a really
do
good. Oh, sorry.
really creative things.
Yeah.
So the other piece of it is, I think, being creative and different. So like we have sent things that are like, all the information's there and you can give, but it is packaged in such a way that you want to open it, because it's like, what's this? It's definitely not the end of year 3-page letter, because it's thick and it's in a different shaped envelope. And then, it's just bite-sized bits of information. There's a QR code to see a video. There's a QR code to donate. But it's like, here's all the stats of how you've helped or what's happening and what we're doing and where we're going. And we get tons of great feedback about those things because it's just different. So we're still sending something, but I think, one, being creative, which I think nonprofits need to do.
Yep.
And it doesn't mean not doing the year-end thing. It just means like, how can you engage your folks differently? That's also mindful of whatever your mission is, that it's aligned with that also.
Yeah.
But I will say, on the asking for money, being on this side and so passionate about, and it's the easiest case I've ever advocated for. We know the solution to the literacy crisis. Like, unlike pediatric cancer, or type 1, we know the solution. We have the cure. We just aren't getting it in the hands of the folks that need to have it so that this stops. So we're so lucky that we know we live in a time where we know how to solve the problem that we're working towards. And by the way, it helps all these other problems too. So I'm so passionate about asking. But I will tell you, the caveat is, there's a couple people that I love so much that there are a couple people, and a couple of them I've gotten over and done it. There's still a couple I haven't asked because I'm so afraid they would say no that it would like hurt me. So I don't know if anybody else ever feels that way, but it's like, because I care about it. So, you know what I mean? That like it would break my heart if they didn't care about it and I asked. So that's an interesting, like, I don't know what that is.
That emotion is real though. Yeah.
Yeah. Like that I don't, because it would break my heart. And so, you know, there's two people that our team is still like, why haven't you? And I'm like, cause I don't want that. It would hurt me, you know, it would hurt me because I believe in it so much. And,
wow. It's a lot to unpack there. It's beautiful. And yes, that emotion is real and people are experiencing a lot of that, no matter what part of development or founder or what have you position they're in. It's a fascinating conversation, Jen, that we have on a regular basis. So, you brought up about your joy of giving, and I thought that was really, really interesting. What was the greatest way? I'm on a psychology kick right now where the greatest way to get people to do more of what they've done well is to praise them, congratulate them, thank them. There's a gratitude level, right, or effort with that. What's the greatest way that an organization has ever thanked you that resonated with you?
I will tell you, I don't think I've ever had that experience.
You have never been thanked for giving?
I have been thanked, but like,
okay, gotcha. Okay. Yeah.
I will tell you one of the organizations that was the biggest like gift that we had given to date sent, it was during COVID, but still they wrote a thank you note and screenshotted it and texted it to me.
Oh my word. Wow.
And I was like, okay, so literally it motivated me for something we do now, because here's the thing. I don't even need to be thanked because I'll just tell you, for me, it's intrinsic. The feeling of giving is intrinsic for me. So, I didn't need a thank you, but if you're going to do it for the love of all that is holy, do not screenshot a note, put a stamp on that bad boy and get it in the mail. Like I was like, tilt. So I was like, okay. And we were sponsors and we like let off the paddle raise for their live auction, or not for their live auction, for their paddle race that Alan was doing, of course. And, so I was like, okay, how do we thank our sponsors for our gala? And so what we do every year is, before we announce our gala, which is coming up in a couple weeks where we'll announce it, and every year we pick a different dyslexic strength and we try to find the biggest headliner we can that is an adult dyslexic. And we have another awesome one this year, and I cannot wait to announce it. It's our best yet. But we will send our sponsors a curated box about 2 weeks before the event gets announced, so that they get the heads up that this is the save the date. It's also a thank you for being a sponsor for the previous year. They get the sneak peek of, who the headliner is going to be. And then the box is curated toward that theme. So, so they get some cool things, and it's a high end, box. But it was inspired by that handwritten but screenshotted thank you note for being a sponsor. So I try to take the things that I experience and I'm like, ooh, I did not like that. Or I liked that. And like, how could we build upon that? Or how could we make that, our own? So I think it's important for nonprofits to go to other events. I think it's important, like if there are nonprofits that align with your mission, or like your partners in some way, like one, you should be collaborating, because we are all trying to get the same money, which is also terrible. And everybody's working on shoestring budgets. So like, how can you collaborate and take the same dollars and make greater impact? So I think that's really important. But then going to their events and seeing what they do well, what would you, how could you build upon that? What would you not do? Like you got to get out there and, and see what other people are doing, and then also try to help support them too.
No question. Oh, I don't think that can be stated enough. You said so many great things. I love the differentiation piece, because we say this a lot. We think differentiation is stronger than competition 10 out of 10 times, especially in this space. There's a tremendous amount of money in the system, so to speak. But like you said, if you can do any of those things, thank people differently, those VIP gift boxes, the announcements, it's so beautiful. Jen, the audience, I know for a fact. Hey, Andrew, by the way, holy smokes, did you hear all that? Andrew's going to hear that on our team and freak out. Jen, that was too good. So much value for folks listening. I can't thank you enough for spending that much. I want to be respectful of your time. Jen, will you do us a favor? Will you tell folks the easiest way that they can get exposed to read and to, how they can learn about the work that you're doing, just so we can make it more of a topic, because it's so obvious it needs to be.
Yeah, thank you for that opportunity. So we're on YouTube, we're on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram. It's READ, REED, Charitable Foundation. And, of course, we have our website that's also READ, REED, charitablefoundation.org. And, of course, my name is Jennifer and last name is Knopf, Knopf. So you can always reach out to me on both our website and also LinkedIn. I'm there as well.
That's awesome. Yeah, everybody do us a favor. I follow Jen and read very, very closely on LinkedIn. A lot of amazing stuff, very educational. That's just where we live. So anyway, a ton of different channels where you can find her. Do us a favor, show her and her team some support, the work that they're doing, the invaluable work they're doing, some support, and show them some love and let them know that you heard about the organization on Hey Nonprofit. So thanks so much, everybody, for tuning in. And thanks, Jen, for the time. Appreciate you so much. That was great.
Thank you so much. Thank you.